The capture sergeant Jenna Cross never thought she would see the inside of an alien prison. The mission to secure mining rights on the Outer Rim had seemed routine. Another diplomatic escort, another show of human military presence to remind the galaxy that Earth wasn't backing down. But routine missions had a way of turning deadly when you least expected it. The transport ship Meridian had been ambushed 3 parsecs from the neutral zone. Pirates, they had assumed at first. The attacking vessels bore no markings, used outdated weaponry, and struck with the desperation of scavengers. By the time they realized the truth, it was too late. These weren't pirates at all. They were Kethvar, slavers working under contract for someone with much deeper pockets and darker intentions. Jenna had fought until her rifle ran dry, then fought with her sidearm until that too clicked empty. She had drawn her combat knife when the boarding party breached the hull, taking down 2 of the insectoid warriors before a neural disruptor dropped her to the deck. The last thing she remembered was the acrid smell of their breathing apparatus and the wet clicking sound they made when they spoke. When she woke up, she was here. Gamma 7, they called it. An asteroid mining facility that had been converted into something far more sinister. The rock tumbled through space in the shadow of a dead gas giant, its surface scarred by decades of industrial excavation. But the mines had been abandoned years ago. Now the hollowed-out chambers served a different purpose entirely. The interrogation. The cell was barely large enough for Jenna to stretch out her arms. The walls were rough-hewn stone, still bearing the marks of mining equipment. A single light panel cast harsh shadows that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. The air recycling system wheezed constantly, filling the silence, with a mechanical rhythm that never quite let her sleep properly. Warden Kextar visited her every day. He was tall even by Kethvar standards, his exoskeleton a deep purple that gleamed under the artificial lights. 4 arms emerged from his torso, each ending in clawed hands that could tear through steel plating. But it wasn't his physical presence that unnerved Jenna. It was his eyes, compound eyes that reflected light like faceted gems, showing too much intelligence and too little mercy. "Your government has abandoned you," he said during one of their sessions. His voice came through a translator unit that gave his words a metallic edge. "No rescue attempt, no diplomatic protests, no ransom offers. They have written you off as an acceptable loss." Jenna said nothing. She had learned that silence frustrated him more than defiance. The Kethvar were used to dealing with species that begged or bargained when cornered. Humans, it seemed, had a different approach to captivity. "Do you know why you are here, Sergeant Cross?" Kextar continued, circling her chair like a predator sizing up wounded prey. "This facility serves a very specific purpose. We break soldiers. Not for information, though that is sometimes a pleasant bonus. We break them for the cameras." He gestured to the corners of the room where recording devices tracked their every movement. "The footage we create here is distributed throughout the outer colonies. It shows other species what happens to humans who dare to expand beyond their little blue world. Fear is a powerful deterrent, and you are about to become a very effective example." The sessions, the torture began slowly. Kextar was methodical, almost clinical in his approach. Electric shocks calibrated to cause maximum pain without permanent damage. Pressure points that sent waves of agony through her nervous system. Injections that made her skin feel like it was burning from the inside out. Between sessions, they would leave her alone for hours or sometimes days. The isolation was almost worse than the physical pain. She had no way to mark time, no way to know if it was day or night in the outside universe. The recycled air tasted stale and carried the scent of industrial lubricants and something else she didn't want to identify. They cut her hair first. Not for any practical reason, but because they knew it would bother her. Jenna had worn her auburn hair in regulation length for 15 years of military service. It was part of her identity, part of her discipline. Watching it fall to the floor in uneven chunks felt like losing a piece of herself. The beatings came next. Kextar was careful, never to hit her face during the recorded sessions. The footage had to show a recognizably human victim, not a mass of bruises and swelling. Instead, he focused on her ribs, her shoulders, her legs, places where the damage would hurt but wouldn't show on camera. Your species fascinates me, he said during one particularly brutal session. Most sentient beings break within the first week. The strong ones last a month, perhaps two. But humans are different. You endure because you have convinced yourselves that suffering has meaning. That pain serves some greater purpose. Jenna spat blood onto the floor. You talk too much. The comment earned her another round with the neural disruptor. The device sent electricity directly into her nervous system, causing every muscle in her body to convulse simultaneously. It felt like being torn apart from the inside, like her bones were trying to escape through her skin. The message. 3 weeks into her captivity, Kextar brought her something new. A data pad displaying what appeared to be an official communication from Earth Command. The message was brief and bureaucratic in its coldness. Sergeant Cross has been classified as missing in action. No rescue operations are planned at this time. Her sacrifice will be remembered. You see? Kextar's mandibles clicked in what might have been satisfaction. They have forgotten you already. You are nothing to them. Less than nothing. But Jenna smiled through her split lips. She had read between the lines, seen what the alien interrogator had missed. The message wasn't an abandonment. It was a warning. The specific phrasing, the routing codes, the timestamp, all of it told a different story to someone who knew how to read it. Earth hadn't forgotten her. They had simply decided that official channels were inadequate for this particular situation. Something amuses you? Kextar leaned closer, his breath hot against her face. You made a mistake, Jenna whispered. You let me see that message. And what difference does that make? Your government has... My government didn't send that message. Jenna's smile widened despite the pain. Look at the routing codes. Look at the timestamp. Look at the classification markers. That didn't come from Earth Command. Kextar's compound eyes studied the data pad more carefully. Then who? Someone who wanted me to know they were coming. Jenna leaned back in her chair as much as the restraints would allow. Someone who doesn't officially exist. Someone who operates outside normal military channels. Someone who specializes in problems that can't be solved through diplomacy or conventional warfare. The warden's exoskeleton clicked as he straightened. You are lying, attempting to create false hope. Maybe, Jenna admitted. But ask yourself, this. Why would Earth classify me as missing instead of dead? Why would they use non-standard routing for an abandonment notice? Why would they include my full service record in what should be a simple status update? She watched doubt creep into those alien eyes. Because they're telling someone exactly where to find me. They're providing everything a rescue team would need to plan an extraction. And they're doing it through channels that your intelligence services wouldn't normally monitor. The waiting. The beatings continued, but Kextar's confidence had been shaken. He brought in additional guards, upgraded the security systems, and increased patrols around the facility. He also began asking different questions during their sessions. Who is coming for you, he demanded. What assets does Earth have in this sector? I don't know, Jenna answered honestly. But I know they're coming. Your arrogance will be your downfall. This facility is impregnable. We have sensor nets that can detect approaching ships from 3 light-years away. We have automated defense platforms that can destroy anything smaller than a battlecruiser. Even if your mysterious rescuers exist, they will die long before they reach you. Jenna said nothing. She had learned that silence was often more effective than argument. Instead, she watched and waited. She counted the guards' rotations, memorized the facility's daily rhythms, and prepared herself for whatever was coming. The recording sessions became more frequent as Kextar grew desperate to break her before any potential rescue arrived. The alien interrogator seemed to understand that his window of opportunity was closing, though he couldn't explain why he felt that way. Your species will learn to fear us, he snarled during one session. When they see what we have done to you, when they watch you beg for death, they will think twice before venturing into our territory. You still don't get it, Jenna replied. Humans don't break the way you think we do. Pain doesn't make us weaker. It makes us angry. And when we get angry enough, we send people like the one who's coming for me. What people? What are you talking about? Jenna met his compound gaze with steel in her own eyes. Earth doesn't have an official Black Ops program. Officially, we don't engage in assassination, sabotage, or illegal warfare. But unofficially, we have ghosts. Operators, who don't exist on any roster, who carry no identification, who answer to no chain of command. When someone needs to disappear, they send a ghost. When a problem needs to be solved quietly, they send a ghost. When one of our own needs to be brought home from hell itself, she leaned forward as far as her restraints would allow. They send their very best ghost. The lights in the facility flickered once, so briefly that it might have been imagination. But Jenna saw Kextar's exoskeleton twitch, saw the way his forearms moved instinctively toward the weapons on his belt. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, something was moving toward Gamma 7. Something that didn't appear on sensors, didn't broadcast identification signals, and didn't care about impossible odds. The ghost was coming, and hell was coming with him. The arrival 300 kilometers from Gamma 7, something moved through the asteroid field like smoke through darkness. It had no heat signature, no electromagnetic emissions, no gravitational disturbance that would register on conventional sensors. To the automated detection grid surrounding the prison facility, the void remained empty and undisturbed. David Kane floated in his stealth pod, watching the facility grow larger through his visor's enhanced display. 20 years of black operations had taught him patience, but the intelligence reports on Sergeant Cross's condition made his jaw clench. The Kethvar had made a critical error when they decided to torture a human soldier for propaganda. They had painted a target on themselves that Earth's official government couldn't acknowledge, but David Kane most certainly could. He wasn't supposed to exist. No military record, no birth certificate that would survive deep scrutiny, no family ties that could be traced back to him. The Ghost Protocol had created him from the shadows of bureaucracy, a living weapon designed for problems that required permanent solutions. Most people called him Phantom, but even that wasn't his real name. David Kane was just another identity, in a long line of covers, though he had worn it longer than most. The stealth pod's navigation system chimed softly as they reached the insertion point. David checked his equipment one final time. Molecular disruptor for locks and barriers. Neural dampener for silent takedowns. Combat stims for when subtlety failed. And his personal favorite, a monomolecular blade that could cut through any known material with the right application of pressure. Ghost actual to control, he whispered into his comm unit. Beginning infiltration. Copy Ghost actual. You are go for operation. Exfil window opens in 4 hours. David didn't respond. 4 hours was optimistic. He had studied the facility's blueprints, memorized guard rotations, and identified 17 different extraction routes. But Gamma 7 wasn't a standard military installation. It was a fortress designed to hold dangerous prisoners, and the Kethvar had learned from their encounters with human ingenuity. The pod's airlock cycled silently, releasing him into the vacuum. David's suit was a masterpiece of stealth technology, absorbing electromagnetic radiation and bending light around his form. To any observer, he would appear as nothing more than a slight distortion in space, easily mistaken for cosmic debris or sensor ghost. The infiltration, the facility's outer hull, was scarred with decades of mining operations, providing perfect cover for David's approach. He found a maintenance hatch near the old processing center, exactly where the blueprints indicated it should be. The lock was electronic, protected by multiple layers of encryption that would have stopped a conventional infiltrator for hours. David's molecular disruptor made it irrelevant. The device restructured matter at the atomic level, turning solid metal into loose powder that scattered in the artificial gravity. Within 30 seconds, he was inside the facility's secondary air recycling system. The ventilation shafts were cramped but navigable. David moved through them like liquid shadow, pausing at each junction to listen for patrol movements below. The Kethvar were naturally loud, their exoskeletons clicking against metal surfaces with every step. It made tracking their positions almost trivially easy. He reached the first checkpoint after 20 minutes of careful movement. 2 guards stood at the intersection of 3 corridors, their weapons casually held but ready for immediate use. David studied them through a ventilation grate, noting their positioning and reaction times. Standard procedure would be to find another route, but David Kane wasn't interested in standard procedure. The neural dampener was nearly silent as it activated. Both guards collapsed within seconds, their nervous systems overloaded by precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses. They would wake up in several hours with splitting headaches and no memory of the past few minutes. David dragged them into an empty storage room and continued deeper into the facility. The hunt level by level, David methodically disabled security systems and neutralized guards. The facility's automated defenses were impressive but predictable. Motion sensors were spoofed by holographic projectors. Pressure plates were bypassed with magnetic levitation. Camera feeds were looped back on themselves, showing empty corridors while David moved through them like a ghost. He found the first clue to Jenna's location in the security office. The duty roster showed regular transfers of personnel to Sub-Level 7, Section C, interrogation protocols, medical monitoring, and something listed as psychological documentation. David's enhanced optics recorded everything while his conscious mind focused on the growing anger in his chest. The Kethvar had turned torture into a science, and they were documenting every moment of Jenna's suffering. When this mission was over, David would make sure the recordings were destroyed along with everyone who had participated in creating them. He left the security office exactly as he had found it, but not before uploading a virus into their computer systems. The malicious code would remain dormant for another 3 hours, then systematically erase every file related to human prisoners. By the time the Kethvar realized what had happened, there would be no evidence of their war crimes left to distribute. Sabine. Elevator shaft to Sub-Level 7 was too heavily monitored for conventional infiltration. David chose a more direct approach, using his molecular disruptor to create handholds in the shaft walls. He descended in perfect silence, his suit's sound dampeners absorbing even the whisper of fabric against metal. The rescue Sub-Level 7 was a maze of identical corridors and reinforced doors. David's scanner detected multiple life signs, but only one registered as human. Cell 7C14, approximately 40 meters from his current position. Between him and Sergeant Cross stood 12 guards, 4 automated sentry guns, and enough security sensors to equip a small starship. David smiled grimly. The Kethvar had built a perfect prison for conventional escapes. They hadn't planned for someone who could rewrite the rules of engagement. The first sentry gun died when its ammunition feed mysteriously dissolved, leaving it clicking impotently at empty air. The second suffered a complete electronic failure, as David's virus infected its targeting system. The guards didn't even notice until it was too late. David moved through their positions like death itself, the neural dampener dropping targets before they could raise an alarm. He reached Jenna's cell door with 30 seconds to spare before the next patrol rotation. The lock was biometric, requiring Warden Kextar's personal authorization. David had anticipated this problem. The molecular disruptor could restructure organic matter as easily as metal, and the Warden's severed claw would provide all the biological material needed to fool the scanner. He found Kextar in his private office, reviewing footage from Jenna's most recent interrogation session. The alien interrogator looked up just as David's blade separated his head from his shoulders. There was no time for conversation, no dramatic confrontation. This was extermination, pure and simple. The extraction Jenna was barely conscious when David reached her cell. 3 weeks of systematic torture had left her body broken and her mind hanging by threads of pure determination. But her eyes were clear when she looked up at her rescuer. "About time," she whispered through cracked lips. "Sorry I'm late," David replied, injecting her with a combat stimulant that would keep her mobile for the next hour. "Can you walk?" "I can run if I have to." David helped her to her feet, noting the extent of her injuries: broken ribs, internal bleeding, severe dehydration. She needed immediate medical attention, but first they had to survive the next 30 minutes. The facility's alarm system finally activated as they reached the main corridor. Lights flashed red while sirens wailed their mechanical warning. David's virus had been discovered, or perhaps someone had found Kekstar's remains. Either way, their window for stealth extraction had closed. "How many guards between us and the exit?" Jenna asked, accepting the sidearm David offered her. "Too many for conventional tactics," David admitted. "But I brought party favors." The thermite charges had been placed during his infiltration, hidden, in critical structural points throughout the facility. David triggered them simultaneously, watching as support beams collapsed and entire sections of Gamma-7 began to fold in on themselves. They ran through corridors filled with smoke and screaming aliens, David clearing the path while Jenna covered their retreat. Her marksmanship was still perfect despite her injuries, each shot finding its target with mechanical precision. The asteroid's artificial gravity fluctuated as power systems failed throughout the facility. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows while the superstructure groaned under the stress of cascading failures. The revelation: they reached the extraction point as David's stealth ship decloaked in the landing bay. The vessel was sleek and predatory, its hull absorbing sensor sweeps like a black hole consuming light. No government markings, no identification codes, nothing to connect it to Earth's official military. "What is that thing?" Jenna asked as they boarded. "Officially? It doesn't exist," David replied, sealing the airlock behind them. "Unofficially, it's humanity's answer to problems that can't be solved through diplomacy." The ship lifted off just as the first section of Gamma-7 imploded completely. David's charges had been placed with surgical precision, causing a chain reaction that would reduce the entire facility to floating debris within hours. Any survivors would have enough time to reach escape pods, but the prison itself was doomed. As they cleared the asteroid field, Jenna studied her rescuer more carefully. He moved with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable with violence. But there was something else in his eyes. A depth of purpose that went beyond simple military duty. "Who are you really?" she asked. David was quiet for a long moment, watching Gamma-7's death throes through the rear viewport. "I'm what Earth creates when civilization isn't enough," he said finally. "When our enemies think they can break us through cruelty and terror, they learn that humanity has its own monsters. We just keep ours on a very short leash." The ship's communication system chimed with an incoming message from Earth Command. Official channels requesting status reports and mission debriefings. David ignored it completely. "What about the other prisoners?" Jenna asked. "There were others in those cells." "Already extracted," David assured her. "My mission was just the finale. 3 other teams have been operating in this sector for the past month, liberating every human prisoner the Kethavar had taken. By tomorrow, the story will be different. Instead of footage showing broken human soldiers, the galaxy will see empty cells and dead interrogators." Jenna leaned back in her seat, finally allowing herself to believe she was safe. "And what happens to you now? Back to the shadows?" David smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "There are other Gamma-7s out there, other species that think humans make good victims. My work is just beginning." As their ship jumped to hyperspace, the last fragments of the Kethvar prison facility scattered into the cosmic void. The aliens who had sought to break human spirits through torture and humiliation had learned a fundamental truth about Earth's children. Humanity didn't just survive in the darkness between the stars. They thrived there, becoming something their enemies never expected and could never defeat. When pushed beyond the limits of civilized response, humans didn't break. They sent ghosts, and ghosts always collected their due.